Hello guys and gals and welcome to another episode of Path of Exile Skills. Today we're going to be looking at a skill that is actually pretty universal. It's called Scavenged Plating. Scavenged Plating is a spirit gem. It does cost 30 spirit. It's not really too bad. It's one of the lower spirit cost items in the game. And it has some pretty interesting effects. It works both offensively and it also works defensively, and we're going to talk about how you can get the most out of it in both cases. So first off, let's just read it. It says, while active, it uses fragments of armor scavenged from enemies to bolster your own. Fully breaking an enemy's armor grants you stacks of scavenged plating for a duration based on the enemy's rarity. And you gain armor and thorns per stack. Normal enemies grant 1 stack, magic enemies grant 2 stacks, rare enemies grant 5 stacks, and unique enemies grant 10 stacks. Scavenged plating duration is 8 seconds, which you can increase using the prolonged duration, which I usually do. So you can see my buff duration is actually 13.5 seconds because I'm using prolonged duration 2. You can also add durations, so set to plus 2 seconds to scavenged plating duration on the additional effects from quality. On top of this, you can also, if you go to PoE 2DB and you search for advanced thaumaturgy. If you happen to be a Gemling Legionnaire, Gemling Legionnaires have additional effects for their skills, and they have some really good ones, additional effects of quality. And if we look up Scavenged Plating, Scavenged Plating has 1% more armor per Scavenged Plating stage, essentially, or buff, or stack, or whatever you want to call it, right? So you can get even more armor, so instead of 4%, you can get 1%, and you can potentially overstack quality, which means you could probably get that to 2, so you're talking about 6% more per scavenged plating, and you can have a maximum of 10 scavenged platings, and of course we can do the math on that relatively easily. That is 4 plus, let's say 3, if you're really pushing it, so that's a 7, and then of course times 10 scavenged platings, which is a total of 70% increased armor, which is actually really good and quite powerful. Another one that you could potentially combine with this is ice armor, if you are potentially in that vein, because it does have a requirement. Where is the... It's not called ice armor, is it? I think it is called armor, though. Arctic armor. Arctic armor has a buff with the Gemling Legionnaire, which grants 20% increased armor per stage, which means that you could potentially combine together Arctic armor's armor per stage and, of course, the scavenged plating together. Now, if you're on the Gemling Legionnaire and you're getting those extra buffs anyway, there won't be any cost because the Gemling Legionnaire does have an ability that makes it so that your highest stat requirement is fulfilling any requirement of the gem, right? So if you're using scavenged plating, which is a strength, and you're using Arctic armor, which is a intelligence, it doesn't matter. As long as you have enough of one single stat, then all of them will work, which is pretty cool. Now, what else does Scavenged Plating give? Well, Scavenged Plating gives also 40 to 59 thorns, over 10 stacks, which is a total of 590 thorns, which is a lot of thorns. And if you're building a Thorns character, it's definitely something that you're going to want to look at. In fact, if we go ahead and take a look at my character, I am a Thorns character at the moment. And I currently have physical Thorns, total Thorns of 5,378, which is not that much. In fact, I have to go out and I have to actually attack things to show you like the full version of my Thorns. And I don't know exactly how well this character is still equipped, but let's just go into any map. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you how the scavenged plating works and the tricks that you're going to need to do to make it function better. I say better because it will function normally on its own, but you definitely need some tricks to make it function better than it normally functions. All right, so let's just go into a map, and I'm going to show you the general gist of things. So first off, what does Scavenged Plating need? Well, Scavenged Plating needs you to break armor. And you can break armor in a myriad of ways. You can break armor with skills that are actually designed to break armor. Or you can break armor with just about any ability if you're utilizing a armor break support gem. So for instance, on my character, trying to remember where I kept my armor break, which of course I cannot remember. Looks like I'm using Lunar Blessing to break armor. No, that's the one that's pulling armor, which is also important, by the way. You do also need to be pulling armor as well. This character might actually just be a warrior. Yes. So I'm using this, which is a very effective one if you are trying to break armor. It is called Anvil's Weight, which makes it so that you basically break 10% of any hit damage dealt, which is massive, and it works essentially on any damage type. So you can break armor with any type of ability. So all of my abilities currently are breaking. Now, the other thing is that I'm also utilizing Battershout, which is supported skills consume fully broken armor on enemies, and there's a reason why I'm doing this. Now, as I break armor on monsters, you can see the pieces of the armor gathering around me for Scavenged Plating. So this is the actual visible queue that the Scavenged Plating is gathering, and I currently have 10 stacks going at the moment. And as you can see, I'm able to break armor relatively quickly. Let's take a look at my stat panel and see what my current Thorns is at. So my Thorns is currently at 11,000 now because of all of the buffs that I'm currently running. And it can even go a little bit higher than that, believe it or not. And as you're stacking your Thorns via this, you're going to get some pretty nice buffs. Now, there is a problem with Scavenged Plating and how it functions defensively in situations where you can only break the armor of a monster maybe once or twice, right? So let me get out of here for a second, and we're going to talk about bosses. Because trash mobs, not really an issue. In fact, if you have any kind of armor breaking at all, you will keep the 10 stacks active pretty much all the time, no matter what, with ease. But when you get into a boss arena, with a boss specifically, one of the things that you're going to notice is that you're not able to keep your stacks up as easily because you can only break the boss's armor one time, right? This becomes an issue because, well, if you can't keep the stacks up, you can't keep it up, giggity, then you're not going to be able to benefit from the bonus that you're getting, right? So you're not going to get that extra Thorns, you're not going to get that extra defense, and so overall Scavenged Plating becomes kind of poopy. So how do you fix this? Well, you fix it by breaking the monster's armor and then removing it. That is the best way to do it. Now, there is a specific support gem that I recommend using if you're going to go this direction. And if we take a look at the gems and we look for a specific gem, I know it by sight alone, it's called Uruk's Smelting. Uruk Smelting is a very good one for this particular purpose because fully broken armor with supported skills causes affected targets to permanently take 5% increased physical damage up to 20% damage and also makes you break 70% more armor. This one is amazing because every time you pull the armor break, a permanent debuff remains on the target of 5% physical damage increase. When you apply the debuff again, another 5% will go on the target, and you can continue this up to 4 times until the monster has a permanent 20% damage increase on them, which is absolutely amazing for bosses. So in most cases, when you're dealing with bosses or single targets that are obviously only going to be broken one time, you're going to need some type of ability to pull the armor break, which is actually really easy. You can use support gems for this. So if you go into the support gem tree, and of course, I only have a tier 2 support gem. It doesn't matter, I can still show it to you. So if we go to all valid and we type in armor, you'll see this one here, which is called Exploit Weakness. Supported skills cannot break armor, and supported skills will consume enemy off fully broken armor to deal 40% more damage. This one can be placed on any skill of your choosing, pretty much. And you can use that to consume the armor break, and then you can, of course, reapply it with whatever skill you're using to break armor. There are tons of skills that can break armor. There are some really, really good ones in the game, and honestly, it's just a matter of choosing the one that you want or how you want to break armor, and you can also just simply utilize the support gems specifically that help you break armor, like, for instance, as an example, if you take a look at Armor Break, there's some pretty good ones like Armor Break 2, which is Break armor equal to 15% of the physical damage dealt by supported skill, 15% chance to gain an endurance charge when the supported skills fully break armor. There's also armor break 3, which is 20% of that and a 20% chance. And there's even a little baby one here of armor break 1. All of these will potentially work for just simply making a skill break armor. Of course, it does have to do physical damage. You can also add in Armor Demolisher so that it can break more armor. And on top of that, you can also utilize skills that are designed to break armor. So if you just type in break, you'll come across a bunch of armor break abilities. Like, for instance, there is Armor Breaker, which is okay. It's a single target armor break. It's not quite as good. There's also Resonating Shield, which is probably one of the best armor break abilities in the game. Not only is it AoE, but it's a really nice AoE. You block while you're using it. It's very defensive, and honestly, you just walk into a pack, tap your shield a couple times, and everything is broken. It's probably one of the best armor breaks I've used in the game so far. And then you also have Ferocious Roar, which can break armor. And I'm trying to remember if there's any others. I think Armor Piercing Rounds, yeah, breaks armor as well. I don't think Entangle breaks armor, but it is a physical skill, which means that you could potentially attach, the armor break to it. And that's also something that you could look up, is you could look up skills that are physical skills. And pretty much any skill that is a physical skill that does physical damage could be used to break armor if you're utilizing those physical breaking support gems, right? So in this particular case, when you're dealing with Scavenged Plating, you're looking for a couple things. Number one, you need to be breaking armor effectively, so that basically every single target that you're hitting is breaking armor. And if you're a physical damage build, you want to be breaking armor all the time anyway, so it's essentially a freebie. Number two, if you want to actually have this be useful when you're fighting single targets, you need some way to remove the armor break and then reapply it as quickly as possible, so that you can essentially just break, unbreak, break, unbreak, break, unbreak, applying essentially the Scavenged Plating buff to yourself, especially if you're a Thorns character. So as a non-Thorns character, it's just simply a defensive buff. But as a Thorns character, this is a massive amount of damage that you need as a Thorns character to basically kill targets. Right? And, as a Thorns character, you can use tons of various things. Like you can use Barbs 3, which will retaliate with your Thorns damage. You can use Quill Burst, which retaliates with your Thorns. You can also use things like Bramble Slam, which creates brambles that are basically scaled off of your Thorns damage. And by the time you're finished, you can apply this damage from Scavenged Plating in a lot of ways to a lot of different abilities. It's actually really nice. On top of that, you can also use Thorns defensively because there is a Thorns passive, which is actually really nice, by the way. It's called Vengeance, which allows you to basically leech 10% of any Thorns damage that you deal, which is a massive passive bonus. And you don't have to be a Thorns character to utilize this. In fact, if you were just any character whatsoever, and you were using Scavenged Plating, like just a armor-based character using Scavenged Plating, and you're getting the free Thorns from Scavenged Plating, this can act as a defensive layer to make your character even stronger, which is essentially going to give you just free passive life leech every single time a monster hits you, because every single time a monster hits you, they're applying Thorns to themselves, and you're getting that leech back, which is actually really nice. Overall, Scavenged Plating is a pretty OP ability and probably works its way into a lot of builds, assuming that you have the Spirit Reservation available. It's a really cheap one, and 30 is not really that difficult to squeeze into a build, although there are some very high cost spirit abilities which could push Scavenged Plating out, and it's not 100% necessary if you're not a Thorns build. However, if you are a Thorns build, it pretty much is 100% necessary, and you're going to have to work your build around it to get the most out of the way that Scavenged Plating works. I think that's pretty much it with this ability. It is a very good ability. I definitely recommend checking it out if you are an armor character or a Thorns character, and consider putting it into your rotation for defensive mechanics or even offensive mechanics. Although you do have to do a little bit of work to make sure that you're able to break effectively and also remove effectively, so that you can keep that Scavenged Plating buff running essentially 100% of the time. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.